What's up, everyone? Thanks for joining me yet again here in Man Cave for another episode of Philly Sports from the Mighty Kingdom. And a few things to discuss, obviously. First and foremost, Flyer season comes to an end today. An 8-5 Game 6, home Game 6 loss at the hands of the Pittsburgh Penguins. They move on in the playoffs. The Flyers season is over. I said before the series it's a tough draw. I was glad the Flyers made it to the playoffs. Of course, winning the last game of the regular season at home against the Rangers and securing a playoff spot. I think it's still experience for the young players on this team. But at the same time, as soon as I heard who they were playing, I said, yeah, that's probably not good. Penguins have given us all sorts of troubles this season. The Flyers just did not match up well with Pittsburgh this year. Of course, losing all 5 games in the regular season, giving up an average of 5 goals a game. Going into the playoffs, obviously, the first game of the series, they lose 7-0 in Pittsburgh. They bounce back with a 5-1 win in Pittsburgh, but then they lost games 3 and 4 in poor fashion. Really never showed up in game 4. It was just an awful game. And then, obviously, look, to their credit, they put forth, solid effort. They won Game 5 in Pittsburgh when no one really expected them to, myself included. Based off how they played in the last 2 games of that series. But they bounced back, and Sean Couturier was out with injury before that game. And then, for how many games prior to it, came back and got the eventual game-winning goal late in the third period against the Pens, and the Flyers win 4-2. Come back home for Game 6, thinking, hey, maybe there's some momentum. They actually get off to a 1-0 start. Sean Couturier with a goal, and then it was just, 2 quick goals for Pittsburgh. McDonald did get the tying goal in the second period, in the first, and it was 2-2 after one. Second period came along. Couturier gets another goal. He actually got a hat trick tonight, so give him credit. He played well, and Sean Couturier had a nice bounce back season. I know he's a nominee for the Selke Award, and that's tremendous. He's earned it. I mean, he's played really well, and the Flyers. There were a couple of players who had bounce back years. Couturier, Claude Giroux. I know Giroux was, for the most part, a non-factor in the playoffs, and that was disappointing, based off how he played this season. But, it is what it is. Flyers go down. Actually had a 4-2 lead in the second period, but then it got erased. There were some bad turnovers. And like I said, if you turn the puck over like that against teams like Pittsburgh, you're going to pay. And that's exactly what happened. Gudas with some bad turnovers. Provorov with some turnovers. Provorov was playing hurt. And to his credit, he played like a warrior. Played out there. Couturier as well. But, again, just, not enough. The Flyers do go down. 8-5 the final. The Flyers do get a hat trick from Sean Couturier, who had a career high in goals this year. I believe he netted 31, if I'm not mistaken. But the difference in this game was, Sidney Crosby had, another goal, assist, and whatever. But Jake Guentzel, with 4 goals in this game, 6 in the playoffs, he was a difference maker for the Penguins in this series as well. Unexpectedly, and sometimes in the playoffs, it's guys like that just shine when you have to shine. And it's one of the reasons why, unfortunately for us Flyer fans, but it's one of the reasons why the Penguins have won back-to-back cups. Obviously, they have superstars in Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin and Phil Kessel. But when you also have contributors, in this case like a Gensel, who gets 4 goals today in a series-ending game on the road, it just says what that team's about. And unfortunately for us, sitting back, it is a big rival, but unfortunately for us, we go down to them. And listen, the Flyers have talent, and they have some young talent on this team, young talent that I look forward to seeing in the years to come, like a Konechny, like a Patrick, like a Provorov, Ghost, of course. They have some good young talent. They have a young goalie coming up through the system in Hart, who hopefully, when he is here, can stabilize a position that's been much needed to be stabilized for a long time, and that's goalie. But it it is. It does. You know, when you have a rival that's done nothing but win the past few years and beat us again in the first round, in this season, didn't beat him in the regular season, it does make it tough. But the hope is, going forward, that the brain trust can make the necessary moves that you have to make to get better. I don't know if that means firing the coach, because obviously I don't want to go through coaching carousel here. I don't think that does any good. A, it doesn't do players good. B, it doesn't do us fans good, because if the next coach comes in and he's worse, it's just playing that roulette game. You want to hit on certain numbers, and if you don't, you're out. So it's easy to say right now, oh, let's just get another coach. Let's get, even a GM. But if that coach or GM doesn't work out, you're back to square one again. And that's a tough place to be. So we'll see. We'll see going forward what the moves are to be made. I'm sure there's going to be some turnover in the roster. But again, that's for the brain trust, to do. They have to do their job. And it's their job to get, to do what has to be done so that this team can compete with the Pittsburghs. It's not just Pittsburgh. This is a very difficult division. When you look at the Metro up and down, even the teams that didn't make the playoffs, and I know it was a real rough year for the Rangers, but there's still talent on that team. And, they missed the playoffs for like the first time in a number of years. I know the Islanders are in a little bit of flummox right now. It depends on what happens with if they can retain Tavares in the offseason. We'll see. Carolina has some good young players. I know they missed the playoffs, but they're right on the doorstep. And obviously, the teams in this division that were in the playoffs. Obviously, the Flyers were, but you also have Columbus and Washington and Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh won the last two Stanley Cups. This is a very difficult division. And it is up to the Flyers' brain trust to make sure that this team continues to get players and continues to, keep on that level where they can compete. Forget about the Eastern Conference in the Metro Division, which is still going to be stacked after this season for the next foreseeable future. So we'll see how it goes. Obviously disappointing, 8-5 loss. It lose the series 4-2 to Pittsburgh, and now they move on in their quest to three-peat, which I hope they don't. But I hope some team can knock them out this year. But give them credit that I said this earlier, and I'll continue to say it. That's a great team. As much as it hurts me to say this as a Flyers fan, they know how to turn it on this time of year. And their star players show up this time of year. And as much as we hate Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin, I mean, if they were Flyers, they would be our favorite players because they show up in the playoffs year after year after year. And maybe some years it hasn't worked out for them. Obviously, they got bounced early in some years, including to the Flyers one year. But for the most part, they have been there. And they have been the stable force on that team for all these years of, them winning. But again, it's up to the Flyers, brain trust again now to try to make sure that this team can at some point compete with the teams like the Pittsburghs, like the Washingtons, those teams in the division that you have to compete with. We'll see what happens going forward. So disappointing end, but I do give credit to guys like Sean Couturier, who had a really nice bounce back year, played really his best year as a pro this year, and played hurt, played through it. Hockey players always do it. But 3 goals today, the hat trick today, 4 goals in the last 2 games, playing hurt, and really putting a lot of pride in that uniform, putting a lot of pride in that logo, that crest that we always say we want our players to put pride in. If you're a Philadelphia Flyer, and Couturier certainly did that, and I think that Ivan Provorov did that. I know he had some turnovers that led to some goals today. Tough. He was playing hurt. Some of the comments he made after the game, I think, really shows the leadership that he has going forward. And I don't think it's going to be long before he has a letter on his uniform. He's got captain, written on him, at least alternate captain in the future. He's going to be one of the leaders on this team. He's one of their best defensemen. And he's still very young. He's 21 years old, but he's a real leader. He's a young leader on this team, and his emotion after the game and seeing how much he took on his shoulders for that loss, I think says a lot. And you want players like that on your team. So I think going forward they have some good young players, good young talent, and now it's up to the brain trust to continue to build the team from here. Use this as a first step. It's a tough one, obviously, going down 4-2 to a big rival like Pittsburgh, 8-5 home loss. Didn't really play well. I mean, I think today they played pretty well for the most part in this game. They just don't have they didn't have the firepower, to match the Penguins. They just didn't have that. They couldn't put it in that extra gear where you need to put it in the playoffs. And when you're up 4-2, you got to stop the other team, and they didn't. And then the turnovers, and even with that, down 8-4 in the third quarter, they had a 4-on-3 power play that they just couldn't cash in on, and it looked ugly. That power play of 4-on-3 looked ugly. And to the Penguins' credit, they took advantage of it, and they came back with some goals. And I know there was a tripping call that should have been called against Couturier that wasn't made, but in the end, I mean, still, you go down 8-5. You go down 8-5. One call here or there, I know it at times could make a difference in a game, but the Flyers just didn't have it. They just didn't have it to match up with the Penguins. As much as it sucks to say it, they just didn't. But the hope is going forward, maybe they will. You take this step, but then, hopefully it leads to better steps. If that makes any sense. The good news for the weekend, so that's it for the Flyers. The season's over. Making the playoffs, losing the first round to the Penguins. But again, experience for young players, and we'll see what that means going forward. Keep getting better to the young players, and for the older players that have been on this team, the ones who return, hopefully they can continue, just to progress, to help this team win. It's been a long time. We've been reminded of this many times. It's been a long time since this team won. The last time they won a cup before I was born, and I'll be 40 this August. So that's a long time, and the hope is, in the near future they will. They'll break that streak. Certain football team did that around here, didn't they? But anyhow, that's the Flyers. The Sixers, look, I talk about young talent. I mean, the Sixers, last I filmed, it was a 1-1 series going to Miami. A place that the Sixers hadn't won this season, hadn't won in 7 straight games. And boy, did they turn things around. They had deficits in those games, and it could have gone either way. Going into the fourth quarter, both those games, the Sixers had great fourth quarters. They had great pushes, and you can just tell going into the when the Sixers are going on those runs, and they're doing it offensively and they're doing it defensively, both ends of the court. It's going to be a problem for the Miami Heat. And the Miami Heat, to me, they're not a bad team. It's a good team. It's a good defensive team. Obviously, they got Dwayne Wade on there. Maybe he's not what he used to be, although he kind of looked it in Game 2. But they have good players. It's a well-coached team. It's a hard-nosed defensive team. But I'll tell you what, when the Sixers stars when they start going, it just doesn't matter. And the Sixers took over those games in the fourth quarter. And you see the good teams do that, haven't we? Over the years, when you see, and I know around here we haven't had a lot of playoffs to watch over the years when we were going through ping pong palooza, those years. But when you see those teams, what do the good teams always do, particularly on the road, to win? Fourth quarter. Because oftentimes this game is won and lost in the fourth quarter of basketball games. Sixers fourth quarter in Miami games 3 and 4. They played as perfect as you can play. The Heat are just running on fumes right now, because it is a lot of work when you play the way the Heat played in Game 2, defensively. And when they try to do it in games 3 and 4, you can just tell the Heat are just running out of gas by the fourth quarter. And the Sixers, because of the youth, because of they just don't know any better, to be that worried, right? They just turn it on and they go to that next level. They hit another gear, and it's like the Heat are just like, what are we going to do? How we've defended these guys as well as you can for 3 quarters. Here comes quarter 4, and and in Game 3 it was Joel Embiid who took it over, and in Game 4 it was Ben Simmons who took it over. And let me tell you something, as a Philadelphia fan, as a Sixers fan, and as a fan of all these teams, isn't it wonderful to have players like this now? After all those years, and look, it was a risk. It was a bold thing that they did to do this Tankapalooza, all these years, to trust the process, everything. And yeah, they got lucky, because if Joel Embiid wasn't hurt, he would have been the number 1 overall pick that year, and he wouldn't be a Sixer right now. They got JoJo. They got Ben Simmons. They were able to get Dario Saric. Those moves, the three cornerstones of this team right now, if you think about it. And we'll see what they have in Fultz going forward in the years. But Embiid, Simmons, and Saric have all played big roles in this series so far. Big roles. And you see that when this team when they start rolling, and I've watched this game a number of years. Okay, and I've seen those teams when they start rolling like that, and you see it in the other team's eyes, like, oh crap, we're in trouble, and you saw that in Miami Heat, even the veterans on the Heat team, on this Miami team, you just see it in their eyes, like, oh, what are we gonna do now, The thing I love about this series, not just the fact that Sixers are up 3-1, this series has just reminded me so much about those old series that I used to watch in the 90s. Those hated, the teams that just couldn't stand one another and would always do these little gamesmanship things. And, it just harkened back, the chippiness of it, the hard fouls, it just really brings me back to those days when the NBA was great. I mean, when you had those great rivalries, the Bulls and Knicks, the Pacers and Knicks, the Pacers and Bulls, and that's just the Eastern Conference rivalries, okay? So it just brings me back to some of that. Watching some of these other series, too. It's good to see, because I think that's one of the things the NBA's lacked for a number of years, is these type of series, the chippiness of some of these series, and it's good to see. You shouldn't like one another. You shouldn't be buddy-buddy. Okay, one team's trying to end the other team's season. You see, you got Whiteside stepping on Embiid's mask. You got Embiid. Yesterday, you had Whiteside. It was a six. I forget who the Sixer was on the ground. Whiteside was on top of him, and instead of trying to help Whiteside, Embiid is like pulling Whiteside off the Sixer and grabbing the Sixer up. I love that. That's what it's about. Yes, it's gamesmanship. It's all that. That is what it's about. That's what the playoffs in the NBA, that's what it should be. That's how it used to be. That's how it should be. Because that's when it was great. And now you start to see some of these things happen again. And I'm glad for that. I am. Now, will it always be that way? Who knows? It's a whole nother generation now. But just the way that Joel Embiid is embracing this villain role. His comments after Game 3, we don't have to like them. I'm a friendly guy, but I don't want to be friends with them now. And all the things he was talking about the mask. Oh, they thought they got rid of the mask. They got rid of me. Well, I got 50. We got 50 masks. And so I'm going to be their nightmare now. I love that. I loved that. I loved hearing one of our players saying that. And we've had to deal with it with other players in the past. Let's not forget the Kobe Bryant comments in the finals those years ago. We're going to tear their heart out. But listen, when it's your guy saying that, you love it. And I just, the way this team played and fought these last two games, and look, they weren't easy. I know the Sixers ran away with it in Game 3, but that was a close game through three quarters. And in the fourth quarter, the Sixers just turned it on. They just hit that other lever, and they just let the Heat go in their wake. And yesterday, you saw it again. Close game through three quarters. Even in the fourth quarter, Sixers down by 12 points in the third quarter on the road. And they come back and win that game. I think it says a lot about the team. I think it says a lot about the coaching staff. And I love the fact that our stars, we just had a series ended with the Flyers where some of our stars didn't show up for the most part. You're seeing in this series, our stars are showing up. Not only showing up, but winning games. Guys are in the playoffs for the first time in their careers in the NBA. Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, Dario Saric, putting games away on the road. Ben Simmons with a triple-double yesterday. First rookie to have a triple-double since some guy named Magic back in 1980 in the playoffs. I think it worked out pretty well for him after that year. Hall of Famer and one of the all-time greats, Magic Johnson, of course. Again, no disrespect at all to the Lakers' name, to that nickname of theirs, but I still call him Showtime Simmons because the guy plays the game at a level, and he is so young and raw still that he still has a thing to learn. He has to get his jump shot down. He has to, with the free throws, he has gotten better at the free throw line, but he can still work on it. Okay? But the way this guy plays and the way it's next level. It's next level stuff. It's Magic Johnson with some LeBron James in him. It's just, and I'm not comparing him. I'm not putting him up on that pedestal with those guys, okay? But watching how this young player plays and the flow that he plays with, and when it's time to get aggressive, you see him go into the hoop, with the dunks and it's awesome. This is what we've been waiting for so long around here. This is what we have waited for so long, and this is why we went through the tanking and the ping pong palooza and all that to get this. And now that we have it, isn't it wonderful? And you got the veterans, you got the role players, the JJ Reddick's, playing that big shot he made yesterday, atoning for the miss he had in Miami, to win a game earlier in the regular season. It's terrific. This team has played hard-nosed basketball. They're not afraid to mix it up with the opponent. The rookies do not look like rookies. The players are making their first appearance in the playoffs. It looks like they've been in the playoffs for years. I know it wasn't a great game yesterday offensively for Joel Embiid, but boy, he come up with some big blocks. I mean, that block he had yesterday on Dragic in the fourth quarter, that's the difference, and that's why I said you need Joel Embiid, and I know it was easy with they went on that winning streak and had the 16 in a row to finish the season, 10 in a row without JoJo in the lineup. They won game 1 without him, and it's easy at that point to say, well, maybe he can just sit out. No. This is the playoffs. This is where you need your best players on the court. And I am so glad they got him on the court in Game 3 because that was really a pivotal swing game on the road. And you were able to win in large part because of how he played in the fourth quarter offensively and defensively. And you were able to ride that momentum, continue it, not get scared in the third quarter when you're down 12 points on the road, come back and have a dominant fourth quarter on both sides of the ball and really wear the Heat out. You see, and this is a good defensive team, the Heat. And the way they have worn this team out, they want to play that hard game. The Heat were playing the hard fouls and everything in Game 2. The Sixers came right back in Game 3 and 4 and said, well, you want to mix it up? We'll mix it up. And it's been beautiful. It's really been beautiful to watch. This team has every right to advance in this series, to get to the next round, and to do damage. And I said when they got into the playoffs, this is a team that it's not just going to be happy to be here. They're on a mission. They feel they have a chance to make some noise in the playoffs, and to this point, that's what they've done. Now they got to close it out in Game 5, close it out so you can get some rest before the next series because it's been a tough series. Even if they win in 5, there's been some rough games. There's been some, but win Game 5 at home, finish off the series, and I believe they will because I think the Heat have pretty much had enough of the Sixers. So finish off this series in Game 5 at home, and the fans are going to be there. They're going to be in full throat, and it's awesome. The fun is back in Sixerland, and I'm ecstatic for it. So that's the playoffs. Obviously, listen, the Phillies have played really well. They're 14-7 right now. They are 9-1 at home. They have pretty much picked off where the Eagles left off, where the Sixers are doing, and they're playing really well. And I know it didn't start well. I know the start of the season when they went 1-5 to start, or 1-4 to start the season. I know it was a lot of questions about Gabe Kapler, myself included, how he's doing with the pitching rotate, with the starters, pulling them early with the relievers. They're going to burn out these relievers by June. But since that, he has done a really good job managing. He's let the starters go deep in the games. Even Vince Velasquez has gone deep into games. And, hey, you give credit where it's due. I said after his first start, I don't want to see him out there again. He's pitched really well all of his other starts after that, and they have won. They have won a lot of games since that early struggle to start the season. And they're, again, 9-1 at home. I think it's their best start of the home series record in how many years. They just sweep the Pirates in 4 games. A 4-game sweep of the Pirates for the first time since 1994 for the Phillies. And look, the starters have pitched really well. The bullpen has been lights out. They have done their job, and they might not all have defining roles just yet, obviously, besides for Hector Neris, who's the closer. But they have done a great job at keeping leads or holding games, or when they're down, keeping them in striking distance where they can come back. This is an offense, and I know the lineup changes every day, besides the top of that order, for the most part, but they have come up with some timely hits, some key hits. Rhys Hoskins has been clutch when he's needed to be clutch. He had a go-ahead RBI double, I believe, in Atlanta last week, and then he had a go-ahead 3-run home run late against the Pirates yesterday when they were down 2-0. He's been big. Kingery has had some big hits, has had some nice moments. The young players on this team, I don't want to put them up on that pedestal, okay? But we haven't had this since we had the Utleys and the Rollins and the Howards and the Hamels, on this team. And we know how that went. That was years ago. So it's fun to watch that again. This team is fun to watch, not just because they're winning, but just how they're playing. Fundamentally solid for the most part. They've had some mistakes, and they're a young team, so they're going to be some. But watching how they play, watching how this team is pitched out of jams, and a lot of key moments in games, including this weekend against the Pirates. It's good to see. Aaron Nola has pitched like an ace. Jake Arrieta has pitched tremendous, as we figured since coming over from the Cubs. Good stuff by the starters, by the bullpen, and one of the big reasons why this team is 14-7, and depending on how the Mets played today, could be tied with them for first place in the division. It's a long season to go, so we don't talk about standings just yet. But one of the big reasons why they are where they are is because of the pitching. The pitching has been lights out, has been great, and will it be that way all year? Hey, there's ebbs and flows, but they have pitched really well. The starters, the relievers, and it's great to see. Obviously, the lineup, the young hitters on this team, there's going to be ups and downs. That's just how it is for any team in baseball. But again, coming up with some clutch hits. Aaron Altair today comes in off the bench, 3 for 3, has a triple and 2 singles, including a game-winning single in the 11th inning, I believe, that played at Knapp. Great to see this team, and it's like they're in tune with one another. You can see them; they're all up against the railing during games. They're really into the game and they're in tune to it, and it's a far cry from where this team was just a few years ago. So it's great to see, and as a fan, all you want is just have a chance. Give your team a chance. Game in and game out to give you wins, and that's what this team has done. I know it didn't start well, and we were all moaning about how the start of the season was, but since then they have really turned things around. I think Gabe Kapler learned some things. You learn from failure at times, and that's how it is across the board in sports. You learn from failure, and I think he learned from that early failure he had. Certainly that first series against the Braves. I know they lost, again to the Braves 2-3, but they certainly played better in this series. They pitched better. Some things didn't go their way. Their hitting wasn't quite there in that series, and they lose 2-3 to Atlanta, but certainly played better, certainly pitched better, and Gabe certainly managed better in that series than he did the first one. And you know what? Again, you learn from failure, and if you do that, then you have a chance to succeed. And it's still early in his career as a manager, still things to learn, things to get better at, but give him the benefit of the doubt. He's done better since the start of the season, and tip the cap to him. He has done well. This team has stayed afloat. They didn't fall apart. They didn't lose all the series or whatever. Everything went to hell, right? They've won all but one series since since they lost to the Mets in that 2-game set, the shortened series with the weather in Flushing. They've lost one series, and it was to the Braves on the road. But then they took care of business against the Marlins 2-3. They swept the Reds 3 out of 3. They swept in Tampa 3 out of 3. Then they lost to the Braves 2 out of 3. But now they won 4 in a row against the Pirates, who coming into the series, the Pirates were first place in the Central, and they were playing pretty good. And they were hitting pretty good too. This is an offense that was scoring a lot of runs before this series. So the Phillies pitchers certainly did their job, and the Phillies again getting timely hits. In the last 2 games, they were down. They were down 2-0 the last 2 games and going into the mid to late innings, and they were able to come back and win those games. So I think that's a testament to the team. It's a testament to how they've played. They've earned their record. They've played tremendous at home. And, going forward, hey, it's a tough week. They got Arizona coming in. That's a good team. And then, again, the Braves. But this time we got them here. So it's going to be a tough week. I think it's kind of a show me week again. But this team has played really well at home in front of the home fans, and they've earned their record right now, 14-7, and have played really well to this point. I know it's early, but the old saying is you can't win a pennant in April, but you can lose one in April, right? The old saying. So they are playing well. They're playing tremendously at home. Of course, 9-1 to start the season at home, and they have a nice little homestand here throughout the week and weekend with the off day tomorrow, and then the Diamondbacks come in, and then Atlanta comes in. So that's the week coming up for the Phils. Again, for the Sixers, try to close out the heat on Tuesday night at Wells Fargo Center, Game 5 in the best-of-7 series. Sixers up 3-1. Just keep doing their thing. Keep doing their thing, and they will win that game. Flyers, obviously, the season ends. We'll see what they do in the offseason. Some moves to be made, and we'll see how that goes. Again, excited for some of the young players, and nice bounce-back season for Couturier and for Giroux. I know Giroux didn't quite light the lamp as much in the postseason, but he had a 100-plus point season, bounced back after struggles last season. He was playing hurt last season. So you just hope, continue to progress, continue to play better, and bring it in the playoffs next year. Obviously they have to get in next year, which isn't always a given, but we'll hope for better things with the Flyers next season. And like I said, the Phillies, great start, 14-7, playing really well, 9-1 at home. The Union dropped another game yesterday against Dallas, 2-0. So like to see them start playing a little better. The Soul won. Let's not forget, the Soul was the team that started this thing around here. Okay, the Arena Football League, the team that won the Arena Bowl last year, back-to-back years, and of course the Eagles go on to win the Super Bowl. Villanova wins 2 of 3 years, and so we're still waiting on the Flyers, but the Sixers have a chance to get out of the first round and give us a nice playoff run here. And so I got my 2018 playoffs hat on here for the Sixers, and certainly some exciting, fun things going on here with them. And the process is certainly moving forward, and hopefully taking us to the second round and then beyond. Let's hope for that. So good stuff overall. Tough one for the Flyers, but you know what? It was a tough matchup in the first round, and hopefully there's some lessons learned there. Hopefully they can get better, going forward. Sometimes, like I said, you learn from failure, and sometimes you get better through failure. And we got to hope as Flyer fans that's what happens with the Flyers. I know it's been a while. It's been a while since they've even been out of the first round. Now this makes it now 3 times in a row, I believe, they've been bounced when they've been in the playoffs. So they've been bounced in the first round. But tough one to take, but let's hope that they do get better, going forward. And hopefully someone knocks off the Penguins this year. Come on, let's not have a 3-peat. Come on, they don't need another one, We'll see how things go the rest of the way. But unlike Pittsburgh, we do have an NBA team around here to watch. So, let's continue to trust the process. Let's go Sixers! Close out the series on Tuesday night against Miami. Let's go Phils. Keep winning. Doing your thing. It's been, 14-7 so far. Playing really well. Let's keep it up. Union, let's get back in the winning ways. And Seoul, let's continue the winning ways. I think now they've won 7 in a row, including the championship last year. So good stuff for them. And I would be remiss if I didn't say this in the last vid. I do want to make mention of this. I know we lost a great one last week. I know Hal Greer passed away. Obviously, one of the all-time great players in the history of the NBA at the time. 96, 97, was it the 95, 96 season? When the NBA celebrated the 50th anniversary, Hal Greer was one of the 50th was on the list of the 50 greatest players in the history of the NBA. He played his entire career in the NBA in Philadelphia with the Sixers, and of course his number 15 is retired. I have his jersey actually in the closet. I wanted to hang it up, I didn't, but his number 15 is one of the retired numbers for the Sixers for good reason. He was a great player, led the Sixers to helped lead the Sixers with Wilt Chamberlain to a championship. Was a tremendous player for many years. I believe is still the all-time leading scorer in Sixers history. Great player again, was named one of the 50th greatest players in the NBA when they did that back in '96 when they celebrated the 50th anniversary of the NBA. Tremendous player, tremendous legend, and a real treasure, in the history of the Sixers and for Philadelphia sports. He passed away. I know the Sixers are wearing his number 15 in the little shoulder band there. And I forgot to make mention of this in the last video. I want to make mention of rest in peace to the great Hal Greer. And anytime you lose a great player, a great legend, that embodied, part of the what Philadelphia sports, it was a sad thing. And unfortunately, he won't be able to, watch them in person, the rest of this run, but he's up there in spirit. I'm sure looking down and smiling on this team that's now taking a 3-1 series lead on the Miami Heat. And so the great Hal Greer has passed, and tremendous player, and sad day. It was a sad day last week to hear that, but, rest in peace to the great number 15 for the Philadelphia 76ers. All right, everyone. Well, thanks for giving me 36 minutes of your time, and I will see you all in the next episode of Philly Sports from the Mighty Kingdom. As I said, go Sixers, go Phillies, go Union, go Soul, and Flyers, let's have a good offseason. The draft's coming up this Thursday, of course, for the NFL. The Eagles get to announce themselves as the defending Super Bowl champions in Dallas. I'm sure Jerry's going to be happy to hear that, and those Dallas fans. Hey, them's the perks of winning. And we also know that the schedule's out now. I didn't get into the schedule yet. I will at some point, but obviously we all thought it would be the Vikings week 1, but the Vikings are scared. They didn't want to play here in week 1, so we got the Falcons. They weren't scared to play here week 1. But yes, the Eagles will have their banner unveiling and start to the 2018-19 season against Atlanta at home Thursday night to kick off the regular season in September, early September. All right, so now we know the opponents and when we're going to play them. And, of course, the draft is this Thursday in Dallas. And let's hope Howie keeps making good moves. All right, everyone, take care. See you in the next vid.